The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. A sterile cage where my mind clawed for answers it couldn't find. I woke to a man's face-sharp cheekbones. Eyes like a storm over Puget Sound staring at me with a tenderness that felt like a lie. "Elliot, thank God you're awake," he whispered. But the name he spoke was a stranger's. And so was he. My name, he claimed, was Elliot Carter. The man, Julian Hayes, said he was my fiancé, a tech billionaire who'd built an empire in Seattle's glittering heart. But his words were a foreign language, each syllable slipping through the cracks of a mind shattered by a car crash I couldn't recall. The doctors called it retrograde amnesia, a cruel thief that stole 27 years of my life, leaving only flashes of rain-slicked streets, a guitar's low hum, and the ache of something lost. Julian's hand, warm and steady, held mine as he recounted our love story, late-night walks along Pike Place, stolen kisses in his penthouse, a proposal under the stars at Gasworks Park. I wanted to believe him. But when I looked in the mirror, the face staring back pale, bruised, with hazel eyes that held no recognition felt like a ghost's. "Who are you?" I'd asked him that first day, my voice raw, and the way his face crumpled haunted me more than the void in my head. He didn't answer, just sat by my bedside, his tailored suit out of place among the beeping monitors. Julian was everything Seattle idolized: charismatic, powerful, untouchable, yet he looked at me like I was his entire world. I didn't know how to trust that kind of devotion, not when my own mind betrayed me. The hospital released me after a week, and Julian insisted I come home with him. Home was a penthouse in Belltown, all glass and steel, with views of the Sound that made my chest ache for reasons I couldn't name. He showed me photosis laughing at a farmer's market, my arms around his waist on a yacht, our hands intertwined at a gala. Each image was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. "You love this city," he said, pointing to a photo of me strumming a guitar by a bonfire on Alki Beach. "You loved me." His voice cracked, and I hated how my silence cut him deeper than any words could. I wandered the penthouse that night, tracing the edges of a life I didn't own. The closet held my clothes, flannel shirts, and worn jeans next to Julian's designer suits. A guitar rested in the corner, its strings dusty but familiar, like a half-remembered dream. I plucked a chord, and the sound stirred something of fleeting warmth, gone before I could grasp it. Julian watched from the doorway, his eyes searching for a spark of the man he loved. I wanted to be that man, but I was a stranger in his home, in his heart. The city outside buzzed with life, but I felt like a ghost haunting my own story. Julian's friends visited, their names Lila, Marcus, prior meaningless to me. They spoke of our past with easy laughter, but their stories felt like fiction. "You were the one who got Julian to loosen up," Lila said, her smile wistful. "He was all work until you." I nodded, pretending to understand, but their memories were a locked door, and I had no key. Days blurred into weeks, and Julian's patience never wavered, though I saw the strain in his tight smiles. He cooked me breakfast blueberry pancakes. My supposed favorite hand left notes around the penthouse. "You always steal my coffee," or "This is where we danced during a blackout." Each gesture was a lifeline, but I was drowning in the void of who I'd been. I caught him staring at our engagement photo one night, his thumb brushing over my smiling face. "I'll wait for you," he said softly, "as long as it takes." But what if the man he loved was gone forever? Then came the night that changed everything. I found a journal in a drawer, its pages filled with my handwriting, words I didn't remember writing. The entries spoke of Julian, of love so fierce it scared me, of fears I'd never shared. One line burned into me: "I'm not enough for him, but he makes me want to be." I clutched the journal, my heart racing. Was this the key to unlocking my past? Or was it proof I'd never be the man Julian needed again? The journal became my obsession, its pages a map to a life I couldn't claim. Each entry was a glimpse into Elliot Carter, the man who'd loved Julian with a reckless, all-consuming fire. Julian's laugh is the only thing that quiets the noise in my head. I'd written, but I'm terrified I'll ruin him. The words clawed at me, raw and intimate, yet they felt like someone else's confession. I read late into the night, the Seattle skyline glittering beyond the penthouse windows, its lights blurring through my tears. Julian found me on the balcony at dawn, the journal open in my lap. "You used to write every day?" he said, his voice soft but heavy with memory. "You said it kept you grounded." I wanted to ask why I needed grounding, but the question stuck in my throat. Instead, I flipped to a page about our first date at a dive bar in Capitol Hill, where I'd spilled beer on his shoes and he'd laughed until he couldn't breathe. "Is that really how it happened?" I asked. He nodded, his eyes bright with pain. "You were so nervous you forgot the words to your own song." I tried to picture it me, a scrappy musician, charming a billionaire in a crowded bar. It sounded like a fairy tale, but the journal didn't lie. Neither did Julian's quiet devotion. He suggested we retrace our steps, visit the places we'd loved, to wake up my memories. Desperate for anything to fill the void, I agreed. We started at the bar, a gritty spot called the Rusty Note. The jukebox hummed with indie rock, and the air smelled of stale beer and nostalgia. Julian pointed to a corner booth. "That's where you kissed me first," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I stared at the booth, willing my mind to remember, but all I felt was the weight of his hope. We walked the city, from the waterfront's salty breeze to the neon glow of Fremont. Each stop was a story: our first fight at the sculpture park, our reconciliation over coffee at Le Panier. Julian's voice wove a tapestry of our past, but my mind remained a blank canvas. At the Chihuly Garden, he stopped by a glass sculpture, its red and gold spirals catching the sunlight. "You said this reminded you of us, beautiful, fragile, but stronger than it looks." His words ached with meaning, but I could only nod, hating the emptiness inside me. The strain was breaking us both. Julian tried to hide it, but I saw the way his shoulders slumped when I didn't react to his stories. One night, over dinner at a rooftop restaurant, he reached for my hand, and I flinched. The hurt in his eyes was a knife to my chest. "I'm trying," I said, my voice cracking, "but I don't know how to be him." He squeezed my hand, his grip fierce. "You're still you, Elliot. Memory or no memory." But I wasn't sure I believed him. Then came the letter, tucked inside the journal. It was addressed to me in my own handwriting, dated a month before the accident. "If you're reading this, something's gone wrong," it began. My pulse raced as I read on. "You love Julian more than you've ever loved anything. But you're scared you don't deserve him. Scared you'll drag him down. Don't let that fear win." The letter spoke of a secret I'd kept from Julian, something I'd planned to confess before the crash. But it didn't say what. The omission was a taunt, a puzzle piece missing from an already broken picture. I confronted Julian that night, the letter trembling in my hand. "What was I hiding from you?" I demanded. His face paled, and for the first time, he looked away. "I don't know," he said, but his voice was too careful, too controlled. "You never told me." I didn't believe him. The journal, the letter, his guarded eyes, they were clues to a truth I couldn't reach. And for the first time, I wondered if the man I was supposed to love was keeping secrets of his own. Doubt crept into the cracks of our fragile truce, a shadow cast by the letter's unanswered questions. Julian's evasiveness gnawed at me, and the journal offered no clarity, only more glimpses of a love I couldn't feel. "He's my anchor, but what if I'm his storm?" I'd written. The words haunted me as I watched Julian move through our days with a quiet desperation, trying to rebuild what I'd lost. I needed answers, so I started digging. The penthouse held cloaca locked drawer in Julian's office, A phone I didn't recognize in a coat pocket. I didn't tell him about the phone, but late one night, I powered it on. The lock screen showed a photo of us, my head on his shoulder, both of us laughing in a park I didn't know. The password was our engagement date. Julian had mentioned once. I typed it in, heart pounding. The phone held texts, emails, and a calendar, all mine, from before the accident. One email, sent to an address I didn't recognize, stopped me cold. I can't keep lying to him. Meet me tomorrow. The date was the day of the crash. Who was I meeting? What was I lying about? The questions burned, but the phone offered no more. I needed to know, so I tracked down Lila, the friend who'd known us best. We met at a cafe in Pioneer Square, its brick walls and warm lights a stark contrast to the chill in my chest. "Elliot, you look like hell," she said, her bluntness cutting through the fog. I showed her the email, watching her face for answers. "You were restless," she admitted, stirring her coffee. "You loved Julian, but you felt trapped sometimes, like you didn't belong in his world." Trapped. The word echoed my journal's fears, but Lila's hesitation told me she knew more. Did I cheat on him? I asked, dreading the answer. She shook her head, but her eyes flicked away. "You were scared. That's all. Scared of losing yourself." Her words followed me home, where Julian waited, his smile fading when he saw my expression. "Where were you?" he asked, and I heard the edge in his voice. I showed him the phone, the email, and watched his face harden. "You were going to meet your brother," he said, his tone clipped. "Your brother?" I repeated, stunned. No one had mentioned a brother. "Elliot, you cut him out of your life years ago. He was trouble drugs. Lies. You didn't want me to know you were talking to him again." His words felt rehearsed, and the doubt in my gut grew sharper. That night, I dreamed of a man's voice, rough and familiar, calling my name. When I woke, Julian was gone, his side of the bed cold. A note on the counter read, "At the office. Back tonight." I didn't believe it. Driven by instinct, I took a cab to the address from the Amela Rundown Diner in Rainier Valley. The place was nearly empty, but a man in a corner booth looked up when I entered. He was older, with my eyes and a tired smile. "Elliot," he said, like he'd been waiting. "You look just like Dad." His name was Caleb, my brother, and he was no drug addict. He told me about our childhood in Tacoma, our parents' deaths, my escape to Seattle to chase music. "You stopped talking to me when you met Julian," he said, pain in his voice. Said he didn't like me around. My head spun. Why would Julian lie? Caleb handed me a photo as kids, arms around each other, grinning. The sight cracked something open in me, a flicker of memory that burned. "You were going to tell him the truth," Caleb said. "That you wanted out. Not of him, but of his world." I left the diner, my mind a storm. Julian's secrets. My own, how much had we hidden from each other? When I got home, he was there, his face pale. "Where were you?" he asked again, and this time, I didn't hold back. "I met Caleb," I said, watching his eyes widen. "Why did you lie about him?" The silence that followed was louder than any answer. The air in the penthouse crackled with tension, Julian's silence a wall between us. "You kept me from my brother," I said, my voice shaking with betrayal. "You told me he was a junkie, but he's not." "Why?" Julian's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with something guilt. "Fear." I couldn't tell. "I was protecting you," he said finally, his voice low. "Caleb dragged you into his messes before. I didn't want him hurting you again." But his words rang hollow, and the journal's warning echoed, "Don't let fear win." I demanded the truth, but Julian's answers were vague, his composure fraying. "You don't understand," he said, running a hand through his hair. You were different before the accident. You were pulling away. His voice broke, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in his perfect facade. I thought if I kept you close, I could keep you safe. Safe from what? My brother. Myself. The questions piled up, but Julian retreated to his office, leaving me with the journal and a growing sense of unease. I met Caleb again the next day, this time at a park in West Seattle, the water sparkling under a rare sunny sky. He brought more photos, more stories our teenage years sneaking into concerts. My first gig at a dive bar. You were fearless, he said, his smile bittersweet. Until Julian. He changed you, made you think you had to be someone else. His words stung, but they fit the pieces I'd found: the journal's doubts, the email's urgency. Had I been planning to leave Julian? The thought twisted my gut, but the void in my memory offered no answers. Caleb mentioned a storage unit I'd kept, a secret even from Julian. You said it was your backup plan, he told me. The address was in Tacoma, and I went alone, the key from my old phone's case burning in my pocket. Inside the unit, I found a guitar, sheet music, and a box of letters, some to Caleb, some to myself. One, dated a week before the crash, was a confession: I love Julian, but I'm losing myself in his world. I need to find my way back to me. The words hit like a punch. I'd been planning to leave. Not Julian, but the life we'd built, a life that felt like a cage. Back at the penthouse, I confronted Julian with the letter. His face drained of color as he read it. You were going to leave me, he whispered, and the raw pain in his voice nearly broke me. I knew you were struggling, but I thought we could fix it. He admitted he'd found the email before the accident, suspected I was pulling away. I didn't tell you about Caleb because I was scared he'd take you from me, he said, tears in his eyes. I can't lose you, Elliot. His vulnerability disarmed me, but it didn't erase the lies. We stood on opposite sides of the truth, and I didn't know how to bridge the gap. That night, I slept in the guest room, the journal beside me like a lifeline. I dreamed of music, of a stage lit by dim lights, Julian in the crowd, his smile anchoring me. When I woke, my fingers twitched, aching for a guitar I hadn't played in months. I found it in the corner, strummed a chord, and felt a spark of memory, faint but real, of Julian's hand on mine as I played. The next day, I asked Julian to come with me to Tacoma. I need to know who I was, I told him. He agreed, his eyes wary but hopeful. At the storage unit, I showed him the letters, the music, the pieces of me I'd hidden. This is who I am, I said, my voice steady. Not your fiancé. Not yet. Just Elliot. For the first time, he didn't look away. Then let me know you again, he said, and the words felt like a new beginning or an ending. The storage unit smelled of dust and forgotten dreams. But standing there with Julian, I felt a flicker of something new: hope. Maybe. Or the courage to face the truth. He picked up my old guitar, his fingers brushing the strings with a reverence that made my chest tighten. You used to play for me, he said, his voice soft. Every note felt like a promise. I wanted to remember those promises, but all I had were the journal's words and the weight of his gaze. We spent hours in that dim space, sifting through my past. The letters revealed a man torn between love and identity. Someone who adored Julian but feared losing himself in the billionaire's shadow. I wrote that I felt small next to you, I admitted, holding up a letter. Julian's face fell, but he didn't look away. I never wanted that, he said. I loved you because you were you. Not my world. Not my money, just you. His honesty cracked something open in me, but the question lingered. Could I love him again without knowing who I was? We returned to Seattle, the silence between us heavy but not hostile. I started playing the guitar again, the chords clumsy at first but growing steadier each day. Julian listened from the living room, never pushing, just present. One night, I played a melody from the Journalist song I'd written for him. The notes stirred a memory, his laugh, warm and unguarded, as we danced in a rain-soaked alley. I stopped, breathless, and met his eyes. I remembered something. I whispered. His smile was cautious, like he was afraid to hope. "Tell me," he said, and I did. The memory fragile, but real. But the past wasn't done with us. Caleb called, his voice urgent. "There's something you need to see," he said, sending me an address in Ballard. I went alone, unsure if I could trust him, but driven by the need for answers. The address led to a community center, where a group of musicians gathered for an open mic. Caleb was there, holding a flyer with my name on it. "You were supposed to play here the night of the accident," he said. "You were meeting me to tell Julian you needed a break." A break. The word hit like a wave, confirming the letter's truth. I hadn't wanted to leave Julian forever, just long enough to find myself. The stage called to me, and I borrowed a guitar, my hands shaking as I stepped into the spotlight. The crowd was small, but their faces blurred as I played, the music pulling memories from the void nights like this. Julian in the audience, his pride anchoring me. When I finished, Caleb hugged me, tears in his eyes. "That's my brother," he said, and for the first time, I felt like him. Back at the penthouse, I told Julian about the open mic, the flyer, the truth. "I wasn't leaving you," I said, my voice steady. "I just needed to breathe." His face was a storm of emotions: relief, fear, love. "I should have seen it," he said. "I was so scared of losing you. I held on too tight." We sat on the balcony, the city lights below us, and talked until dawn. He admitted his own fears of being too much, of not being enough. For the first time, I saw him not as a billionaire, but as a man, flawed and human. The next day, I moved out. Not to leave him, but to find myself. Julian helped me pack, his hands lingering on mine. "I'll wait," he said, echoing his promise from the hospital. I rented a small apartment in Fremont, filled it with music and memories I was starting to reclaim. Julian visited, bringing coffee or stories, never pushing. Each visit felt like a step toward something new, not the past we'd lost, but a future we could build. My Fremont apartment was small, cluttered with secondhand furniture and the echo of guitar strings. It was mine, a space to rebuild the man I'd been. Or maybe someone new. Julian's visits were the highlight of my days, his presence a reminder of what we'd had and what we could still become. He'd bring takeout from our old haunts or sit quietly while I played, his eyes tracing every note like it was a piece of me coming back. The memories were returning, slow but vivid. A chord would spark a flash of us on a ferry, wind in our hair, or a lyric would bring back a late-night talk in his car. Each fragment was a gift, but they came with pain, the weight of knowing I'd almost walked away. The journal had stopped being a lifeline and became a mirror, reflecting a man who'd loved fiercely but doubted himself. "Julian deserves better than my fears," I'd written. I was starting to understand why. Caleb became a regular part of my life, too. We'd meet for coffee or jam sessions, rebuilding the bond Julian had feared. "He thought I'd pull you back to the old days," Caleb said one afternoon, strumming his guitar. "But you were always your own person, Elle." His words grounded me, but they also stirred guilt. Had I let Julian's world swallow me because I didn't believe in myself? The question drove me to the stage, where I played open mics, each performance pulling me closer to the man I'd been. One night, Julian came to watch. I saw him in the back of the bar, his suit out of place among the flannel-clad crowd. I played a new song, one I'd written about loss and finding your way back. When I sang, "You're my anchor, but I need to swim," his eyes locked on mine, and I knew he understood. After, he pulled me into a hug, his voice thick. "That was you, Elliot." All you. For the first time, I felt like it was true. But the past wasn't done testing us. A tabloid broke a story about Julian's company, accusing him of hiding financial troubles. The article mentioned Maya, mystery fiancé, who'd vanished after an accident. Reporters started digging, and soon my face was on gossip sites. My amnesia a headline. Julian shielded me as best he could, but the pressure was suffocating. I'll handle it, he promised. But I saw the toll it took late nights at the office. His smile strained. I wanted to protect him, too. But how could I when I was still piecing myself together? Then came a call from Lila. There's something you need to know, she said, her voice urgent. We met at a quiet diner, where she slid a USB drive across the table. This was in your storage unit. I found it after you moved. The drive held audio files, recordings of me, talking to myself, planning my future. One file was a confession, recorded the day before the accident. I love Julian, but I can't live in his shadow. I'm telling him tonight. I just hope he'll understand. The words were a knife, cutting through the fragile hope we'd built. I played the recording for Julian that night, my hands trembling. He listened, his face unreadable, then said, I knew you were struggling. I just didn't know how to fix it. We talked for hours, unraveling the fears we'd both buried, his need to control, my need to escape. I don't want to lose you again, he said, his voice raw. But I want you to be whole, even if it's without me. His words broke me, but they also set me free. I wasn't choosing between him and myself anymore. I was choosing both. The Seattle rain fell in sheets, blurring the city lights as Julian and I stood on my apartment's tiny balcony. We'd laid our truths bare, his fears, my doubts, the love that had survived it all. I don't know if I'm the man you proposed to, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. But I want to find out. Julian's smile was small but real, the first unguarded one I'd seen in weeks. Then let's find out together, he said. And in that moment, I knew we weren't rebuilding the past, we were starting something new. I threw myself into music, playing gigs across the city, each note a step toward reclaiming myself. Julian came to every show, his pride a quiet anchor. My memories returned in waves: our first kiss, the way he'd hum off-key to my songs, the night he proposed under a sky full of stars. They weren't complete, but they were enough to know I loved him, not as a stranger, but as the man who'd fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. The tabloid storm faded, Julian's company weathering the scrutiny with his usual tenacity. But he changed, too less controlling, more open. He invited Caleb to dinner, the three of us laughing over pizza like a family finding its way back. I was wrong about you, Julian told him, his voice sincere. Caleb grinned, clapping his shoulder. You're not so bad yourself, rich guy? It was a small moment, but it healed something in me. One night, I found Julian in the penthouse, holding the engagement ring I'd stopped wearing after the accident. I don't expect you to wear it, he said, his eyes soft. But it's yours, whenever you're ready. I took it, the metal cool against my skin, and slipped it on. Not a promise, but a possibility. I'm not going anywhere, I told him, and the relief in his eyes was worth every struggle. Months later, I played a sold-out show at the Rusty Note, the bar where we'd begun. Julian was in the front row, his smile brighter than the stage lights. I dedicated a song to him, for the man who waited, I said, my voice thick with emotion. The crowd cheered, but all I saw was him, the man who'd loved me through the void. After, we walked along the waterfront, the city alive around us. I'm still remembering, I said, my hand in his. But I know I love you. He kissed me, soft and sure, and for the first time, I felt whole. The accident had taken my past, but it gave me something else: a chance to choose love, not out of memory, but out of truth. Julian and I weren't perfect, but we were real. Our love forged in the fire of loss and rediscovery. As we stood by the water, the Space Needle glowing in the distance, I knew we'd write a new story, one where fear didn't win, where love was enough.